Welcome back, guys. Hey, I missed you guys. How's everybody? Guys, it's been a long time, man. It's been a long time since I rock and rolled. I'm back. Sorry for the last minute bail last week, guys. I came down with something that was a little bit pretty rough, actually. I don't know what it was, a flu or whatever. And I'm still kind of recuperating. I'm not 100% yet. I'm going to say every day is a bit better. Today's maybe 95%. Everything's good, except for the energy levels. So yeah, unfortunately, I had to bail. Sometimes you're in life, sometimes you're the windshield, other times you're the bug. Well, last week I was the bug. So it was definitely one of those rough weeks. I didn't touch any gear, didn't do anything last week except like I was horizontal for the better part of the week, and only in the last couple of days started to actually get back to doing stuff. So glad to be here today. Hopefully that's the end of it for 2025. Unfortunately, I had a lot to talk about last week, and I had a lot of things lined up because of the NAMM show and everything that's going on. So I had a good roster of topics ready to go. So unfortunately, missed out on that topic, but today we'll cover a lot of that stuff. So if you guys have been, getting the withdrawal symptoms from not participating in the Sunday show, today should alleviate that, I hope. So thank you all for joining me today. I hope you guys are doing well. I know these bugs are going around. A lot of people that I know have caught it. My little group of people, I was at a get-together with about 8 people. And I swear to you guys, 5 out of the 8 people got sick. I was one of the lucky 5. So I'm not going around licking doorknobs, but yet it seems like these bugs are still active. So we'll see what happens moving forward. But I hope you guys are all doing well. Let me say hi to the guys that are here already, the folks that are up nice and early on Sunday. Jack says, good morning, everyone. Hoping everybody's feeling well this week. Much better, Jack, at least on my end. I hope you guys are all doing well too. Jack says he likes his Vox amp. Which amp now, Jack? Is that the last one that you purchased? Or is this a new one now? I'm losing track, so please remind me. Eddie Jr.'s here. He said he had pneumonia for the past 3 weeks. Eddie, man, I feel sorry for you. I know how that goes, how crappy that feels. And there's nothing worse than not feeling well. And I could relate. So hopefully you're doing a bit better. And take care of yourself. Take it slow. Pneumonia is no fun, dude. A lot of people that I know have actually gotten pneumonia. So I think that's the flavor of the bug this year. It's like you get sick, you get some kind of a flu, and it develops into pneumonia if you're not careful. So you got to be extra vigilant. My secret go-to, concoction to help me feel better when I feel like a scratchy throat coming on or something like that is Fireball. Just to disinfect things, It usually does the trick, and I like the cinnamon. It kind of like gives you that nice warm feeling down the throat here. Warms you all up. So that's my go-to. Dan is here, says good morning everybody. Wayne says what's up all, and Mark's gas station, good morning. Davis Music as well, good morning dudes. It's me, Don P. Boomerang says, wishing you all well. Jeepers, that's no good, Eddie. You okay now? So hopefully Eddie is doing a bit better. Cushman says, feel better. Tony, thanks. Davis says, Tony, future of tube amps. I love mine and the history, but it's starting to look like it will never be the same. Well, we will definitely touch upon that in today's conversation. There's a lot of things that I want to talk about, and that's one of the topics for sure. So we'll cover that, Davis, in a few minutes. Now, Mark is here too. Good morning, Mark. He says, get better soon, Tony. My dad is down for the count with it. Yeah, man. I hope your dad is doing better. It just sucks, man. I thought this was all over, and it's like nothing worse than getting the flu. All right, so let's talk about new stuff. First of all, the good news is I'm still alive. That's the good news. The bad news is now I have to charge everybody that's American here a 25% tariff for watching a Canadian show. I'm laughing, but I'm not laughing on the inside, guys. I think these new tariffs that are basically gonna hit on Tuesday are gonna wreak havoc on a lot of things, including gear. A lot of people don't think about gear when they're talking tariffs. You know, they're thinking about other things. But I guarantee you, we're gonna see prices skyrocket very shortly. And it's a shame. So that means all of our favorite American brands, Fender, Marshall. Well, Marshall's not American. Well, we'll talk about Marshall in a second because we're not even sure what Marshall is anymore. But for sure, Fender, PRS, all the American brands, Gibson, Mesa Boogie, all these things. I'm sure we're going to see a nice little price hike very shortly on all of that stuff. I know it's, the tariffs are usually being applied to Canadian merchandise going to the States, but I guarantee you guys the Canadian government will retaliate with our own set of tariffs shortly, and it's going to wreak havoc on everything. So I think this is the beginning of the dark days, guys. I think that's what's going to happen. I think we're going to see a lot of prices go up, and at that point we'll see what it does to the markets, but I don't think it's a good thing. What do you guys feel about all that? Did you guys think about any of that happening? Thank you, Searching for Tone. Tone sent a little super chat. He says, my tariff admittance fee. I appreciate that, man. Johnny Guitar 57 says they will settle the tariff thing. I don't know if they're going to settle it anytime soon. The last time Trump was in power, he hit everybody with tariffs there also. So I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon. I think it's going to be part of the ongoing future, and we're going to have to find ways to deal with it, but not fun. Now, Mazzetti says, at what point in the future do you feel not selling our collections will come back to bite us in the butt? In other words, there aren't enough guitar players for all the gear available. I don't think you really have to worry about that, Mazzetti. I think really there's going to be a market for gear all the time. I don't think there's going to be a necessarily, prime time to sell your gear. I think and it also depends what kind of gear you have, right? I mean, if you have run-of-the-mill regular guitars that you can get anywhere, anytime, obviously that's going to be a little harder to sell because there's a lot more of those particular types of guitars and amplifiers and everything out there available. But if you have a nice collection where you're dealing with a lot of these vintage guitars or guitars that are a little bit more collectible, there's always a market for those kind of things. And I don't think you ever do wrong by sitting on gear if you can. Just waiting a while until the moment is right. If you really want to sell stuff, there's always a right time. Shane says, won't buy any gear from America for a while until the Americans get rid of this president. Well, it might be a while, Shane. It might be a while. I don't know, man. I mean, I like American gear. I don't want to not have to buy American gear, but, if the prices go up, I might have no choice. I might have to start looking elsewhere. It's a shame. NFM says, glad you're feeling better, Tony. Thank you. He says, sorry, I'm late. Had to shovel 8 inches of new overnight snow. Yeah, that's always fun. That's always a fun way to start your morning. Johnny Guitar 57 says, gonna talk political Trump talk. I'm out of here, he says. Don't worry, Johnny, we're not gonna be focusing on that. We're just talking about gear. That's more important than anything else. So we're gonna start talking about some of the latest news. Now, one of the things that I focused on yesterday with my latest video was the fact that Marshall has been sold to a Chinese company. Now, I'm sure you guys probably have already heard the news by now. I put the link down in the chat for you guys if you want to watch the full video. But basically, what the news is there is that out of the blue, like I was all gung-ho waiting for Marshall to announce something new at this year's NAMM because I was sure they were going to come out with something interesting, and they did. They came out with some interesting gear. They came out with the modded JCM 900 as well as a slew of new pedals. Now, I was a little disappointed with the choice of which amp they decided to come out with this mod. You know, I would have much rather have seen a modded Plexi or a modded JCM 800. I'm not a huge fan of the JCM 900s. I used to have a combo of the JCM 900, and it's a great, the JCM 900 has a great crunch tone to it. And I guess if you hot rod it, you could even get it into higher gain territory. But I don't really feel that I'm being enticed all that much to go out and buy one of the JCM 900s. And I think the Marshall announcement was kind of overshadowed by the Friedman modded Jose mod amplifier that they came out with. I think that one was sort of stole the show when it comes to a Marshall inspired amplifier. Basically modded Marshall, for example, stealing the show. So I think at this stage, it's interesting because I feel like there's a lot of talk about Marshall now that it's been sold to a Chinese company. And by the way, the thing that gives me the icks a little bit is that the company that the group that it was sold to is actually even runs TikTok or is part owner in TikTok, and we all know all the crazy things that's been happening there. So I think I don't know what's going to happen with Marshall, to be honest with you right now. I think that if they start modifying the way they're being made and start cutting corners, I think it's going to be the beginning of the end for Marshall. Now, I'm hoping that they're going to put more attention on some of the big sellers, kind of like what Gibson did, refocusing on their main core line and not necessarily deviating from that. Hopefully, if they do that, we might be able to see some interesting new things coming out. But there's a big chunk of the pie that Marshall has been making money with, which has nothing to do with amplifiers. You know, they've been coming out with headphones, they've been coming Bluetooth devices and other type of gear that has nothing to do with amps. So it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen. But right now, I think the best Marshalls on the market are probably being made by Friedman right now. So I think that's going to be something that isn't going to change. And, they've been rocking out some great products. The new Jose mod amp looks like it's killer. I don't know the MSRP on that yet. Haven't really, I don't know if they've even announced a price on that yet, but that's looks great. It looks great. I'm more enticed to buy something like that. The only thing that kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth is that they did release another Marshall recently, right? That was based on Dave Friedman's classic Marshall. That was released like earlier this year, right? It wasn't that long ago. So it's like if you spent money on that amp, and now they came out with the Jose mod, you're like, oh man, I should have waited. I could have got the Jose modded one, But I'm sure it's going to be pretty expensive. So if anybody knows the price on that one, let me know what it is. I'm curious to know. I haven't had the time to go out and look at the pricing on that. So let's see what you guys have going on this week before we jump into some other chit chat about NAMM and all the great products that we saw this year. Let's see if any of you have purchased anything new or have made any changes in your roster. If you have, let me know. Now Johnny Guitar 57 says that they only own 20% of the company now. Forget it. China will make decisions on where they are made. You can watch and see. I'm sure that they will. My take on this, Johnny, is that I think this is what they're going to do. This is what I would do anyways. I would keep, pumping out the Bluetooth devices and the headphones and all that kind of stuff, because that's good money, easy to make, easy to pump out. I would probably end up re-releasing a lot of the core line. So a lot of the older amplifiers that they're renowned for, the JCM 800s, the Plexis, the JTMs 45s, all that kind of stuff, I would probably re-release those again, hand-wired versions or something like that, and just have them the fact that they came out with the modded JCM 900 means that they're probably going to come out with some other ones as well, and I'm sure they will. And so then you can have like a different tiers. You can have like the consumer versions of the amplifiers, where if they want to start making them in Indonesia or China or wherever, those are like the budget ones. Maybe they can even keep the prices lower by doing that. But then if you want the premium stuff, kind of like the custom shop stuff, then you can go out and buy like the hand-wired versions that are still being made in England. Like hopefully they'll keep the England location going and maybe turn that into like their custom shop kind of historic location where they pump out all the good stuff. You know what I mean? If they do that, then people have a choice at least, and they don't feel like they're left out in the cold. And Johnny says that he's happy that he bought his Marshall before the sale. I did the same. So I'm happy about that too. I'm pretty sure you're going to start seeing prices go up on the used market for any kind of Marshalls. I think people are going to jump on the bandwagon shortly and say, okay, now's the time for me to pump up my price a little bit, maybe pump them up a couple $100 and see if I can get some extra dough out of it, Presley says that he's seen some new cars with Fender sound systems. Haven't heard one yet, but I'm interested to see if they sound a little bit better than a stock system. I've actually taken a ride in one of those cars with the Fender sound system. I mean, to be honest with you, if you didn't tell me it was a Fender sound system, I wouldn't have known any different. It's a standard. It sounded good. Didn't sound bad. I mean, there was nothing to indicate that it's a Fender sound system. There was no like spring reverb effect or anything like that, when you're listening to your music. So it's a standard thing. But I guess Fender is also diversifying into other markets as well, as we can see here. So Rico, hey Rico, how's it going, buddy? Rico says he bought the Sonic Cake Pocket Master. Sounds like a vibrator, but anyways, the Sonic Cake Pocket Master for $65, cheap. It's been fun to play with using the app. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying that. I haven't tried around. I haven't tried any of the Sonic Cake stuff yet, but I've heard a lot of more people are talking about the Sonic Cake stuff. So I think they're making a good impact out there on the market, I think. Cool Tunes says, Tony, thoughts on the Wolfgang Special? I like the Wolfgang guitars. I mentioned that before, I think. I used to have a Wolfgang Stealth guitar, and I bought that on a whim. I was in Vegas, and I just was trying. I was at Guitar Center, I think it was, with a friend of mine. We were just like spending some time there trying out some gear, some used stuff. I pulled one of the Wolfgangs off the wall, and started playing it and immediately fell in love with it. It had a great feel to it. It just felt great. And I wanted to buy it then and there, but I didn't have a good way of getting it back. You know, I was flying out and would have to take that with me on a plane. Not a good idea to take guitars with you out on a plane. So I didn't buy it then and there. But as soon as I got back home, I looked around for one and I ended up buying one. And I really did like that guitar. I think it played really well and it sounded really great and had a great feel to it. The only reason I ended up selling it over after a while was that I felt that the nut width here was just slightly too small for my fingers. And I didn't really realize it at first. It took me a while to realize it, but after a while it just didn't feel right to me. So I ended up selling it. That was the only reason I sold that guitar. Otherwise, I would still have it today. It really played great. And the funny thing is that Wolfgang had almost exactly the same nut width as my Ernie Ball Music Man. And I don't know if it's because both the Wolfgang and the Ernie Ball Music Man were, I think, designed for Eddie Van Halen, and maybe he chose to have the nut width a little bit narrower, but they both had exactly the same width at the nut, and that's the reason why I ended up selling the Music Man as well, because that was an awesome guitar. That was a fantastically made guitar. Felt so good. Bird's eye maple neck on that thing was just waxed neck. So it didn't have the poly on it, and it had the Floyd on it and everything. It was a great guitar. If they had exactly the same guitar with a slightly wider neck width at the nut, I wouldn't have sold it. So yeah, you have my blessing on that one, man. As long as you don't have fat fingers. If you had fat fingers, you might reconsider after a while, but give it a shot. You never know. It's worth trying it out. Steve says, would you like Marshall to make new cool amps or just pump out the versions of old stuff? Well, that's always the tricky question, Steve, because as guitarists, as musicians, you know how we are. We're very finicky about new stuff. It's like we want new stuff, we want innovation, but we want it to be like the old stuff, you know? So it's a little bit tricky in that regards, because if you change things too much, people are going to say, it's not like the old stuff anymore, like it's not the same, you know? And if you don't change it enough, then it's like people say, they're just rehashing the same stuff over and over again. So it's really a tough one to call. I'd be happy with slight modifications, but again, where do you end? Where's that line? You know, there's always a comfort zone, and if you pass that line, people quickly get up in arms and get the pitchforks out and the torches out and start, you know, rallying against the company, saying, you guys ruined what Marshall was and you shouldn't have touched it, and, you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, I'm not sure. It's a good question. What do you guys think? I mean, I think there's so many amplifier makers out there today, and there's so many amplifier makers that actually base themselves on that Marshall tone, that if you do want to have something that is like that provides the Marshall tone without necessarily being 100% vintage inspired, you know, you can easily find that kind of stuff. I mean, case in point, you know, I have this beautiful Brunetti Pleximan right here, for example, and this is an amplifier that I've had for a long time, and it's basically a modded Plexi. Before Dave Friedman was modding Plexis, and Marshall came out with modded Plexis. Beautiful Italian amplifier. It's got the Marshall tone in spades, and it has all of the flexibility built into it in terms of more than one channel and switching for higher gain and whatnot. So, you know, there's the answer right there. There's plenty of companies doing exactly that, and I highly recommend the Brunetti Pleximan to anyone, actually, if you're looking at a good Marshall type amplifier. And since it's coming out of Italy, I don't think it's going to be affected by the tariffs. So there's a good choice right there. All right. So Shane has been shopping again. Shane says, just sent you in Instagram one of my new 86 Telecaster. Ah, Telecaster, Shane. Ah, you're coming around. I thought you didn't like Telecasters, dude. Very cool. All right. Hey, glad to see it. Nice guitar, man. Let me just here. Let me see. Can I tilt this thing here? Unfortunately, it's very small because I can't tilt it. But hey, I'll show the boys. There you go. Shane's Telecaster. Nice, man. I like it. It's got the mojo. It's got the Keith Richards mojo, man. I don't know what happened to the fretboard exactly. If that's not you that put that dirt on the fretboard, I definitely disinfect it first before playing it. But it's a nice guitar, man. I really like it. Congratulations, dude. I love Telecasters. I've always said it, and I'll say it again. It took me a long time to appreciate Telecasters, but I think they're fantastic instruments. They're not for everybody. I know some people just don't like the look of a Telecaster, but once you start playing it, I'm sure you're going to appreciate it for what it is. So congratulations, Shane. Nice. So did you chuck one out when you brought that one in, or you're just hoarding them all now? What's going on? So Martin's here. Hey, Martin. How's it going, man? Martin says the EVH Wolfgang has an R2 nut. The EVH 5150 has an R3 nut. Better for fat fingers. Yeah. Yeah, I think so, man. You have to take into consideration the fingers for sure. I think what's going to end up happening is that most people, oh, we're getting blurry here. Most people will find the one that's right for them. It's just that sometimes you don't realize that at first. And, you know, it's happened with a couple of guitars where I felt like it was a really nice guitar. I didn't really feel it was going to bother me. And then over time, it did. And it was something that I couldn't live with, so I had to sell it. So we have 70 people in the house today. Fantastic. Glad to see. Please give me a thumbs up. Only half of you have given me a thumbs up here. So don't worry, I'm not going to charge you any tariffs for the thumbs up. So it's all good. Today I'm playing the... I don't know if you guys are familiar with this guitar. I've shown it a couple of times, but this is the Gibson SG. And I'm just playing through my FM9. This is a SV20H patch that I made based on my my SV. Based on that head right there. That's the Marshall Studio Vintage. So I really love playing this guitar. One of my favorite guitars. And this is another one of those stories that it just took me a long time to appreciate SGs. Just as long as it probably took even longer than what it took for me to start appreciating Telecasters. The SGs were like never up on my list. I always felt like, it's not for me. I tried a couple down the line and I didn't like those, and I just automatically assumed they were all the same until I came across this one. This one is definitely a keeper. The neck on this thing is amazing, and I just love the way it plays and sounds. So I'm happy I found it, and I grabbed this one right away. So if you're not completely sold on SGs, don't give up right away. Give it another try. Sometimes it takes a couple of tries to find that your taste has evolved enough to start appreciating some other gear. All right, now I wanted to talk a little bit about NAMM, because, you know, there's a lot of stuff that has happened over the last week or so. and I wanted to start talking about some of that. There's also a poll question out that I put out last week, and the poll question is on the community tab. And the poll question is basically based on a Marshall. It's a Marshall type question. So the question was, Marshall's been sold to a Chinese company. Does this mark the end of an iconic British brand for you? So you still have time to post your votes. We'll take a look at some of the answers and comments on that shortly, and we'll talk about all of that as well. But I wanted to start jumping into the NAMM stuff here, unless there's some other questions that I missed here. If there's a question that you want me to answer for you guys, just put a question mark in front of it, please, so I can see it easily. Paul had a comment here. He says, I ordered a Fozzy Audio V3 Mono Type D 120 real RMS watts amp with balanced XLR inputs. Easily sounds as good as a $1,500 audiophile amp. Price $150. Size of a double 2-switch style stomp box. That's pretty cool. Fozzy, huh? I'll take a look at that. I'll do a little bit of research on that. Thanks for that that little tip, Paul. Always appreciate it. And Steve says, I ask, Steve had something up here. Let me just go back a little bit here. Yeah, so Steve says that he asks because Gibson gets a lot of hate for just remaking the same guitars over and over, or just other old ones from the past. Yeah, and so you're wondering whether or not Marshall's going to do the same. I have a feeling they might. They might rip that page right out of the Gibson playbook. I have a feeling, because there's money to be made there. You know, when a company buys another company, they don't buy it for any other reasons than to make as much money as they can. So, you know, if there's a way for them to make money, they will definitely take advantage of it. Shane says Shane says it was $438 USD. It's a pretty good deal for a Telecaster. Nice. Vox says, I love my SG thanks to Angus, but first fret seems like it's in the next area code. Yeah, it does seem like it's a little bit more of a stretch because of the way the neck is mounted on the body on these guitars. But once you get used to it, it's really great. It's such an easy thing to play. You can go all the way up here without any effort at all, man. Up to the last fret, like, you know, you can. No issue at all. You know, some other guitars are a little bit more challenging to get all the way up to that last fret. You don't. It's not always necessary, but when you want to do it, it's really nice. So J. Paul says, don't hate me, guys. I bought an Epiphone. Brand new Les Paul custom. I don't know what I was thinking, but it's freaking ridiculously good. $580. Had some creds, paid $480. Why do you think we're gonna hate you, man? There's nothing wrong with the Epiphones. I've purchased a few Epiphones in my time too, and they're great guitars. They're built really, really well. I mean, you know, you don't have to buy a Gibson. You know, Epiphones will scratch that itch. I've purchased an Epiphone SG. I've purchased an Epiphone 335 recently. You know, a few Epiphones have come and gone along the way here too, so nothing to be embarrassed about. I think that's you made a good choice then. If you find that it's amazing and you love it, then it's a good choice. Ian's Guitar Shack says Marshall is history now. Well, I don't know if it's a little too soon to say that, but let's just say we are sort of waiting and watching. and just to see what's going to happen next. It's always interesting. I say there's usually no big changes after an acquisition for at least 3 years. Everybody sort of starts to look at what the plans are and what they need to do next and all this kind of stuff. And usually it takes about 3 years before you start seeing major changes. So we'll see. The good news is that the family's still there. They still own a 20% share, even though it's quite a small share. Hopefully they'll keep them around, and they'll use them for their expertise, and they can come out with some interesting new ways to entice people with new products that they're going to release. Now let's talk about NAMM. There was a couple of things that I saw, and a couple of things that have caught my attention. Now, anything interesting that you guys found? There was a little product that flew under the radar that didn't get a lot of hype, but it was a product made by AMP RX. They launched this, it's sort of a pedal, from what I can tell. Kind of like a pedal. It's called the Brownie, and basically it's a voltage optimizing power supply to make your tube amp perform at its best, and you can nail, of course, that Eddie Van Halen Brown sound. It's interesting because it didn't really get a lot of attention or airtime. It kind of flew under the radar. But I think if anybody out there is looking at a good way of getting, playing around with the voltage on your amplifier. So if you plug in a Marshall, for example, or something like that, and you want to get that sort of brown sound, which is basically starving your amplifier for power, you can do it with this device, and you can do it safely. So if you plug a Marshall straight into a wall in London, it will sound 30% better than the same Marshall hooked up in a wall in America. It's a fact. And everything has to do with the voltage. So, he developed this product just specifically because of that fact, because it would drive him a little bit crazy. And so he ended up creating this device, and I think it's very nice. I think it's something I definitely want to try. So it's compatible with vintage tube amps, and it's hand wired. It's made in the US, so tariffs, but it's priced at $299. So if anybody is interested in checking it out, it's made by AMP RX, and it's called the Brownie. And that's something that caught my attention because I am a Marshall guy. I consider myself a Marshall guy. It would be nice to be able to get that brown sound out of it, Yeah, it's basically that. You're exactly right, Marcel. It's a voltage regulator, but it's made specifically for amps. So you don't risk, hopefully you don't risk damaging your amplifier. Do they still make the Variacs? Yeah, you can still get Variacs. If you want to go the old school way, you can definitely do that as well. Maybe not as safe. I haven't really messed around with Variacs or anything like that. So I don't know how safe they are on your amplifier, if there's ways that they can damage your amplifier or not, but I haven't really played around with them. But this one caught my attention. So we'll see. Maybe something I'll dig a little deeper on. Now there's an interesting guitar that came out also during NAMM, made by Martin Guitars. And it's a $3 million acoustic guitar. And this thing it's a crazy looking guitar, man. I'm gonna share this with you. Let me share this because you have to see it. Otherwise, there we go. So you're looking at this Martin right here. Crazy looking inlay on the back of this guitar, and look at the front of this thing. Look at the neck. I don't know if you can even see the neck here, but it's got inlays everywhere. I don't know if you can get a good look on it. Even the top of it, like it basically not 1 square inch of this thing is not untouched. Brazilian rosewood, sycamore tree, inlaid with gold and pearl, diamond encrusted headstock, solid palladium pickguard, which features a ruby inlaid map of Nazareth. Pretty crazy. Now I don't know who's gonna end up buying this, but it's actually 300,000. I said 3 million, but it's actually $300,000. So it's the D3 millionth is what it's called, but it's $300,000. So I guess if you're a rich dentist, you know, then they came out with this crazy thing, which is a double neck acoustic, which is kind of weird looking. The Oliver, they're coming out with some crazy stuff. Now the thing is, I don't know about you, but I don't have that kind of do re mi. I don't have that kind of scratch. So if you're going to be looking at purchasing something like that, you definitely have to have a good job. For me, those are like collectible items. They're something that you wouldn't necessarily ever play. So I'm not that interested, even if I did have the money. I guess it's an investment, right? So yeah, I thought it would be around the $1 million mark, but it's only 300,000. So consider it a good deal. Now Davis says, careful with a Variac that actually adjusts voltage. Sounds great, but can shorten the power tube life and sometimes the output transformers as well. Yeah, this is what I always worried about, is whether or not there's a cost at the end of the road if you're playing around with this kind of stuff, you know. Probably there would be. So I think that the Brownie or that particular pedal might be a little bit a better option, so that you don't necessarily end up accidentally damaging things. So the Rolling Stones apparently will be playing again, touring again in the UK this summer. They haven't let up. They're still going strong. So if anybody still hasn't had an opportunity to catch the Rolling Stones and you're really, really dying to do so, you might have another opportunity this summer. It's amazing to me how these guys are still even standing up at this stage, but I guess they're just going to keep on doing it till they can't do it no more. Kudos to them. I think it's great. I think, man, if I had if I had the moxie to be able to play music till I was 80 or 90 years old, I definitely want to do it. Sure beats rotting away at some old folks' home, right? All right, so let's talk about the Friedman amplifier. Now, the Friedman amplifier, of course, was, I think, the show stealer at NAMM this year. And, you know, they basically announced it as the end-all, be-all amplifier with his name on it. Eddie Van Halen, Steve Vai, Metallica are among rock royalty who used the Jose Arredondo legendary amps. Now Dave Friedman is honoring his legacy with a definitive model. So apparently, from what I understand, the family is involved to a certain degree. I don't know what that means, if they're getting royalties or if they're getting a cut out of the sale of this amplifier. I guess to be able to use the name, they kind of had to be on board with it. So they've released it now. We've heard it. I've heard it on a lot of videos. And it sounded pretty good. Now, the only thing is that this amplifier is definitely a loud one. It's 100 watts. Right, and I don't think there's any half-watt switch on this amplifier. So if you're buying it because you want the full-blown 100% Marshall sound, modded Marshall sound. So it could be very, very loud. I don't think it's actually designed for home use, and that's probably the only reason why I personally wouldn't want to buy one. If it had a half power switch on it, and I could be wrong, maybe it does have a half power switch, that would be great, but otherwise it would just be too loud for me. But it does have the tone. One thing though, you know, for guys like you and I, honestly, if you have a Marshall inspired amplifier, you can easily get that modded Marshall sound using pedals anyway. So there's no real, you know, need to go out and spend $3,000 or $4,000 on an amplifier just because it's got the mods on it. Obviously, if you want to play it in a live scenario, if you're playing a band, if you need that 100 watts of power, then that's probably the closest you're going to get to the originals that you can no longer get anymore. And you know they're going to be well built because Dave Friedman is putting them together. So he's the guru and he's the one to go to. So if you're interested in an amp like that, you know which one, you know where to go. Again, don't know how much they're selling for. Don't know if the prices have been released yet or not, so you guys can fill me in on if you've seen anything like that on out in the wild. And the other interesting thing that I saw also, and this is something along the same lines, if somebody out there is looking at, you know, trying to tame a Marshall, if you have a 100 watt Marshall or even a 50 watt Marshall, for example, and you want to tame it so that you can play it in manageable volume levels, Celestion came out with a speaker called the Peacekeeper, which lets you dial in the volume, I guess get it into the sweet spot, but at a lower threshold. So this is something that maybe a lot of people out there might appreciate if you're trying to, you know, get the volume levels under control. Interesting name, Peacekeeper. I think it's kind of funny, but I like it. I don't know how well they sound because I haven't actually heard them, but apparently they will be able to keep things tame. Maximum power rating on the speaker is 50 watts, and it's going to be compatible with most any cabinet, so you can basically put it in there, and it just basically gives you a little bit less push. Now, as far as pricing goes on this, not really sure, but it's definitely going to be less expensive than having to work with a load box. You know, a speaker is going to cost you what, about anywhere from $100, $150 to $250, let's say, at the most expensive end. And if you're going to buy a load box, you know, a decent load box of any kind, it's going to cost you, could possibly cost you a little bit more than that. So if the speaker does sound good and it doesn't take away any of the tone, and it just works on volume alone, this could be a very interesting option that could solve a lot of people's problems. So you should take a look at that. The guitar that, if we look at guitars and guitars that I've seen at NAMM and all that kind of stuff, I'm going to say that for this year, I think one of the guitars that has caught my attention wasn't even necessarily at NAMM, and it's the Jet guitars. Now, I don't know if you guys have seen Jet guitars. They're made out of China. So again, a lot of interesting things coming out of China. And I started looking at these guitars because they did check a lot of boxes. They have a really modern look to them. Excuse me. I need a little sip of water here. A real modern look to them. They don't use Floyd type vibratos. Looks like they're very well put together and set up. And they have a lot of nice options in terms of the finishes and whatnot. And I'll show you a picture of it. Just give me a second here. And what I like about these guitars is that they're kind of like high-end guitars, again made out of China, but they remind me a lot of the Suhr guitars. So if you're looking at something like a Suhr guitar, you know, the Suhr guitars are $3,500, $4,000 now if you're buying them directly from the US. These guitars are about $900. So quite a big difference in terms of of pricing. And if you like the things that Ibanez is doing as well, I would say that these new jet guitars are quite, I'm going to say they're going to be Ibanez competition for sure. So let me pull this up for you. I'll go to the Jet website here. We can look at that together. So here is the website here. So you can see they have quite a few different style guitars. They look very similar to what you can get in the Sur line. So they have the Super Strats, they have the Telecaster inspired versions, they have sort of like the Charvel versions or the Ibanez versions here. A lot of nice looking guitars. So if we click on, let's start by clicking on one of these here. Let me just, let's look at this one, which is called the Fireburst. So here, you can see the guitar, a really nice top on it. And C profile, 25.5, the scale length, 22 frets, medium jumbo, Wilkinson bridge, so it's not, you know, just a no-name bridge. Alnico custom set pickup here, and there, if you look at the quality of the guitar, front and back, looks quite nice. Looks very similar to what you would get on a Sur here. I don't know if they have any other close-up photos. We can look at that here. But nice looking guitar, man. So you can see it's got the little switch to split the humbucker. And humbucker in the bridge, single. It's got really nice wood trim all around. And looks pretty sweet. I even like the inlays. Like the inlays are not just cheap plastic inlays. They look like they're good quality mother of pearl. So it doesn't look like they're skimping on quality here. So if you're spending that, you know, $800 or $900, you're getting something quite good out of it, in my opinion. So that is one of the guitars, and the other interesting options that you have here, you can see a few in the lineup. They have a lot of different choices in terms of what you can possibly get. If you're a Strat guy and you just want a Super Strat, you can do that. Very nice colors. I like this one as well. So there's a lot of really interesting designs here. So you don't necessarily have to spend a lot of money. You know, you can just look at some of these. And in the 1000th series here, I guess these are the more higher end versions here. They have the Volcano. Interesting. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there for you guys in case you're looking at, you know, other options that won't necessarily cost you $3,000 or $4,000. Now, Mark says, the store near me sells Jets. They look cool. They feel cheap. Really bad frets. Really? So is the fretwork the only issue on the guitar, or is it just that they feel cheap overall? Because if they feel cheap overall, that would be a deal breaker for me. If it's just the frets, we can definitely fix that. But that is it is sad when you pick up a really nice looking guitar and the fretwork is not done. I'm just wondering why companies would even do that. Why would you spend so much money producing a really nice looking guitar only to skimp out on the fretwork? You know, it seems like a no-brainer, you know. Maybe it's just quality control. Dan wants to know, did you see the LED guitar they had at NAMM? No, I didn't see that, Dan. What was it? Was it just a modded out guitar full of LEDs? I'm not really enticed by that kind of stuff. I mean, you know, it's interesting to see what they can do, but I wouldn't necessarily say that I would spend my money on such an instrument. That's just me. But I can get why, you know, people would gravitate towards something like that. So beyond the cool amplifiers, I didn't really see that many enticing guitars. Um, there wasn't that many that actually caught my eye, I'm going to say. Now, the thing that did catch my attention, however, was the fact that Fender did launch a new 599 standard series. Now, I don't know if you guys caught that announcement, but basically, I have a feeling, I mean, my impression of all of this is that Fender's trying to pull a fast one on us. They're basically taking the Squire line. They're calling it the Standard Series. They're charging $599 for it, and they're putting a Fender logo on the headstock. But the actual guitar is actually, I'm going to say, a budget guitar. So I don't know if you guys are good with that. I mean, it's almost like they're tricking us into thinking that the Standard Series now is going to be less expensive. But it's actually a cheaper guitar that they're calling the Standard Series. The Standard Series till now was always a step above. So it's almost like it's a marketing play. And now these guitars are going to be made in Indonesia, right? They're not going to be made in Mexico. They're not going to be made in China, as far as I can tell. They're going to be made in Indonesia. Now, I haven't, to be fair, I haven't tried one yet, so I shouldn't necessarily knock it yet. But I can already see the signs on the wall that, you know, we're basically being tricked into thinking that this Fender guitar now is going to be as good as the old Standard Series, which it isn't. Have any of you tried one yet or looked at one yet? You know, $599 for a Fender guitar seems like a good deal, but $599, if you just remember that it's basically a Squire guitar made in Indonesia with a Fender logo on it, is, you know, not that much of a good deal. So I'm going to reserve my opinion on this guitar till I actually get a chance to try one in a live scenario, or go to a store and try one. But yeah, I'm not convinced. Like, I would still rather buy a used Mexican Fender guitar for about $600 than an Indonesian-made Squire with a Fender logo on it. That's just me. But we're going to, for sure, start hearing some news on these. I'm sure there's going to be YouTubers that are going to start talking about these. I'm sure Fender's probably sending them out to influencers as we speak. But I'm going to reserve my opinion on it. There's still, you know, there's still a lot of hype around the new Behringer pedals that have been released. We know that they're releasing the clone. We know that they're releasing the fuzz pedal, and they also released what is it? What was that third one? The slips my mind now. But there's another one. They released another one, which is the Octavia fuzz. So they're not basically slowing down at all on these new, like, blatant copies of these older pedals, the remakes of these older pedals. So I'm going to be curious to see whether or not the Octavia fuzz is also something that people think sounds good. From what I heard originally on the fuzz pedals, is that some people are claiming they don't necessarily sound that good. I'm not surprised, but it's hard to tell because when you look at an Octavia fuzz or a fuzz bender, something like that, you either like them or you don't. So a lot of people might say, it doesn't sound that good. But to be honest, a lot of these fuzz pedals don't sound that great. You have to kind of dial them in for that very specific tone. And if you deviate from that tone, yeah, you definitely don't have that much of a sweet spot with these things. So it's going to be one of those things that, you know, if you have the right gear and you're looking for that particular sound, then it could be the one for you. But I'm still curious to try them. So I'm going to be interested in trying a couple of them. The other one I couldn't remember was the 69 Vibe, which is a uni vibe type pedal. And they also released another one, if I'm not mistaken, which is the chorus portion of the jazz chorus amplifier. So if you're looking at that chorus sound and you want to get that really lush chorus effect, well, they've also released a pedal that basically takes that and puts it in a box, which is interesting to me as well. Steve says, I've watched a review of the Standard series and he said it was mediocre with fit, finish, and materials. He said it was the worst Strat he ever played. He was angry and felt insulted that Fender made this. Who is this, Paul? I didn't get the first part. I'm curious to see who that was, but you know, without even trying one, I could probably tell you it's, you know, I probably would agree with those comments. Vox said, hopefully Behringer puts out a reverse engineered Marshall since they will be made in China anyway. The Rockman, yeah, Ian's Guitar Shack says the Rockman was something that a lot of people were talking about also at NAMM. I looked at it and I was like, meh, I think I'd pass on it. I think it's a very, very limited use type pedal. If you're really into that Rockman sound, then yeah, for sure, go out and get one. But I don't think a lot of people today want that. You know, it's almost like it's a throwback. It's nice to have. It's nice to play around with for a while. But I don't know if anybody really is going to be using that for a long time. I think that's going to be one of those flash in the pan pedals. People are going to talk about it for a week or two and then it's going to be gone again. That's just my opinion, by the way, but one thing also that was really cool is that Billy Gibbons, you know, Reverend Billy Gibbons, launches a solo tour. And I thought, you know, the last time I looked at a couple of videos from what we can call ZZ Top, which I don't really think is ZZ Top anymore, to be honest with you. But anyway, the last little run of videos that I saw them playing, I was kind of heartbroken because it seemed to me like they were just going through the motions. And at certain videos, it almost seemed like they were using a backing track on the vocals and Billy wasn't even singing, to be honest with you. But these new latest sets of videos that I came across are really, really good. And basically this tour is, it's basically he calls the band the BFGs. And they're playing a whole bunch of different ZZ Top songs, but they're playing with different musicians. He's playing with different musicians, and the videos are really, really good. So if you go out, take a look, just type in BFG Live and, you know, Sharp Dressed Man, for example, or Just Got Paid, or Foxy Lady, or whatever. They really sound good. I think they sound even better than they did when they were playing, you know, with the real, if you can call it that, ZZ Top band. They released a set list, and the set list is quite good. It's got everything from Waiting for the Bus, Jesus Left Chicago, Gimme All Your Lovin', Cheap Sunglasses, I Got It If You Want It, Blue Jean Blues, Foxy Lady, Certified Blues, Francine, Nasty Dogs and Funky Kings, Just Got Paid, Sharp Dressed Man, Brown Sugar, Lagrange, Pipeline, Red Red Wine, and Thunderbird. So interesting to see that those guys are still out there and still going to be, rocking. And it looks like they're doing smaller venues. So to me, that's really what you want. You want to be able to catch these guys in those smaller venues like that. I haven't had the opportunity to catch any live ZZ Top show. If he would come to our neck of the woods, which he probably wouldn't anyway, but if he would, with this particular lineup, I'd go out of my way to go watch them. I wouldn't say that about ZZ Top necessarily. The other interesting thing is Moore, the company Moore, M-O-O-E-R, has released the GS1000, which is an intelligent and profiling processor. And this has caught a lot of people's attention as well, because there are a couple of units out there that will allow you to profile your amplifiers, but they're pretty expensive. And apparently this one from Moore is quite affordable. And if anybody's looking at perhaps cloning your amp setup so that you can take it with you and play that in a live scenario, this might be the more affordable way to go about doing it. Now, I don't know how good it works. It's relatively new. I would love to get a sample to be able to test that. I would definitely want to clone my Brunetti, my Princeton, the Marshall for sure, even my my Supersonic. Would be great to have all of those amplifiers in a small, easy to carry device like that. But I don't have one yet. I'm working on it. If I can get it, great, and I'll show you guys what it can do. But it's interesting to see that there are options out there. So if any of you are into doing that kind of stuff and you want to take your amp sounds with you, but you don't necessarily want to lug your amps, there's only a couple of options available right now, right? The Kemper allows you to do that, but it's quite expensive. I think this unit, if I'm not mistaken, let me see, how much does this thing cost? Let's see. Just to see compared to the Kemper what we're talking here. In Canada, it's about $749. So it's not necessarily like super inexpensive. It's not like $200 or something like that. $749 Canadian. Still a substantial amount of change, but way less expensive than a Kemper. Now, Vox says, made in Indonesia guitars isn't necessarily bad. My Indonesian-made Squier VM70 Strat is probably my most played guitar because it's that good. I agree. Don't get me wrong here, guys. Just because it's made in Indonesia or China doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad instrument, okay? But there's different levels of quality. And that's the thing that you have to remember. Just because it's like saying everything made in China is cheap. That's not true. There's a lot of stuff coming out of China that's amazing. It all depends on how much you want to spend, to develop this kind of stuff. So I just feel like I think the Fender line is a little bit less quality. Now, Vox wants to know, has anyone else noticed that your guitar tone sounds a lot different than what you're hearing when you play back a recording of your playing? Yeah, that's basically because of the room. When you're listening to a playback on anything that you record, you're basically not necessarily going to be getting as much of the room feel as you are when you're actually listening to it in a real room. That's what I try to strive for whenever I'm doing any kind of reviews for gear or specifically for amplifiers and whatnot. Is I try to get as much of the room sound as I can. So it's because if you take a microphone and you just put it in front of the speaker like that, you're really just getting speaker, very little room. And that's really the main difference of why it sounds so varied. So you have to kind of blend both to be able to get a more realistic sound. Presley says, I'm pretty sure my buddy Todd has all his amps loaded into his Kemper. He replicates all the album recording tones for each track that they play live. And that's pretty much what the Kemper is made to do. I would love to be able to have that ability, because then, you know, you don't necessarily have to carry amps with you. Vinny's World says there's also the mic, which really colors the sound when you're recording. Absolutely. I mean, it depends on many aspects, right? If you're recording with 5 different types of microphones, they will all sound different. A lot of people like to mix and match the sounds of more than one microphone to be able to get the sound that they're hearing in the room, or the sound that they want to represent. It's tricky, because then when you introduce more than one microphone on a speaker, then you're also dealing with phase issues. And if you're out of phase, it's going to sound really thin and brittle, which is not what you want. So there's a whole bunch of miking techniques that you really need to understand to be able to get the best recording. Now, the whole issue with all of the fires that were happening in California, from what I understand, those are under control for the moment, and I don't think they're completely gone. But I think that I think most people are out of danger at this stage, and it was interesting to see how people did, come to the aid of their fellow citizens, and everybody started to pitch in, and it was really nice to see everybody helping out their neighbors and keep making sure that everybody was safe. And I'm glad that we've kind of gotten over that scenario at this stage. Of course, it's a big impact on a lot of different people out there, and I hope everybody's doing well at this stage, but it just shows that people can be very resilient and very helpful when push comes to shove. So I'm happy to see that. I hope everybody is going to be okay and come out the other side of it okay. I hope the, all of the issues with, all the real estate issues and insurance issues and all that kind of stuff get resolved for most people. It was a scary period, and I'm very glad most people came out okay on that. Have you guys seen the new Chiari guitars? This is another brand, by the way, that I've been kind of interested in looking at as well. They introduced some new lineups at NAMM too, and they're very nice looking guitars. The reason why it caught my attention mostly is because I think Steve Stevens is actually a new endorser of this guitar, and I'll share a little preview of that with you guys. You can see Steve here, Steve Stevens Signature Series. And when Steve does come out with something, it's usually quite good. I don't know how much this is going to cost, but you can see it's got his little signature ray gun here, right by the switch. 2 humbucker style pickups. The interesting thing on this guitar is that it does seem like a little, I don't know if it's just the view. If you look at the 12th fret, it's got interesting inlays there. And it's got LED accents apparently. So I don't know if this is one of the LED type guitars that you guys were talking about. They have bare knuckle ray gun pickups, LED accents, and premium electronics. So I'm curious to see the details. 1,005, 1,006, 1,009 are the standard prices for these guitars, but I don't know if the Steve Stevens models will be a bit more expensive. So coil splitting capabilities, LED selector switch with red, green, and blue accents, bezel tuners, master tone volume control, ray gun engraved pickguard, available in jet black, gloss, and Olympic white inlays, and sleek ray gun inspired aesthetics. interesting looking guitar. So I don't know if I'd be a buyer on one of these guitars, but it's very unique looking for sure. Anybody else seen those before, or is this something that is flying under the radar and it's only me that's that's seeing these things here? Paul says, I was watching and posting the NAMM videos as fast as they literally came out. The offerings are mediocre. I expected much better. I was amazed how lame it was. I have to agree with Paul on that. I have to agree that this year the NAMM show seemed a little lackluster. There wasn't as many interesting things being released. I was hoping that Charvel would come out with some new guitars this year, but I don't think they have. They're looking... it's like nothing really is happening on the Charvel side. Let me just see something. Unless I missed it completely, I don't think there's a lot of interesting new guitars on the Charvel side here. Let's have a quick look-see. So here we can see a couple of Charvel guitars. Of course, we have this one, which is pretty cool. I like the paint job, I gotta say. I'm partial to that kind of a throwback paint job. They have a couple of new basses. Let's take a look at these. So yeah, here we got a couple of interesting guitars. I don't like... This is the thing about the Charvels for me and why I haven't actually picked one up recently. I don't like the the HSH configuration. I always feel like the middle pickup gets in the way. So for that reason, I'm not a big fan. And a lot of times, if I can get an H configuration, it comes with the Floyd, and I would prefer nowadays not necessarily to have to deal with the Floyd. So as you can see, like on these models with no Floyd, they all have either humbucker single single or humbucker single humbucker. They don't have humbucker models unless it's an option here, and it's also $2,599, which is very expensive. I don't know why it's that expensive. I've seen these models locally here for like just a little bit under $1,000 or sometimes $1,200. So why they're $2,599 all of a sudden beats the heck out of me. I mean, it's a signature model, I get that. But you can basically get a very similar model for a lot less. So if I go into their guitars here, if I go into, like, there's the Artist series here, that's going to be more expensive. If I go into the USA Select options here, what do we got? So, like, this model would be interesting, but it's only offered in solid colors. So it's almost like they're missing the mark. Like, I would love to see, something like this, but with only humbuckers on it. It's almost like they have all the models except the one that I want. So it's like, you look at these here, for example. Jim Root, Satchel. Meh. At this stage, I'm almost more enticed to go out and buy an SBS guitar and mod the heck out of that one. Have you guys seen the SBS guitars from Guitar Fetish? Let me just pull that up for you guys here. I'd almost go out and buy one of these and just mod them. They'll be less expensive, that's for sure. So if you look at the SBS guitars, I don't like the relic versions of these guitars. If you look at the custom versions here, again, the reverse headstock is not for me. I prefer to go with the straight ahead headstock, like, something like this. But you would be dealing with a, you would have a Floyd on these. $259, you get a guitar that looks like that, Super Strat type guitar. The issue with these is that the 299 model, 259 model, the Floyd on these are pretty bad Floyds. It's not a Floyd Rose, so you would have to upgrade that Floyd if you want to get decent action out of it, you know. But let's say you go with, I don't know, something like this, for example. You know, you could mod something like that relatively easily and get it to where it's half decent. But they do have a higher end version of these guitars with an actual Floyd on them. You would have to go with that if you want to get something right out of the box that you don't have to necessarily upgrade. Is it the 365 model? I'm not really sure which model it is here. Vintage Series, Showroom Series, Custom Series, and Vintage Series Offset. So I don't know if it's the Showroom Series. Could be. This is a hardtail. Anyway, another option in case you're looking at something that is more affordable compared to a Charvel. Boomerang says, I was looking at those yesterday. The shipping is expensive. Yeah, that's my experience too. Unfortunately, the guitars and the pickups and stuff are not that expensive, but shipping is quite expensive. And you're also probably going to have to pay duties on that as well, right? Vox says shipping doubles the price pretty much, and tariffs as well. Yeah, that's the thing. So you have to also consider that, guys. I agree with Ian Guitar Shack. Don't buy fake Floyds. They're nothing but trouble. You're just going to end up having to replace them eventually. If you can afford it, get a real Floyd. Or don't go with a Floyd at all. J. Paul says, buddy of mine went through 2 Charvels, fret sprout, high frets, sloppy cut nut, and he says others have the same problems. Yeah, you got to be very selective when it comes to Charvels. You got to keep in mind they're basically Fender guitars. They're not all made the same. I think one of the reasons why the Charvel guitars will probably have more fret sprout than other guitars is the fact that a lot of times their necks are not finished in poly. So they absorb moisture and they shrink a lot more than regular necks. You would have to treat them, at least put a wax on them or something. Any other questions, guys? Boomerang wants to know, would you consider building another guitar? I always would. A lot of times if I can't find what I want, I'll build what I want. And this is case in point, like if I have to go out and buy a guitar, like with 2 humbuckers, sort of Charvel style guitar, and have to mod it anyways, I might as well just buy the parts and build it myself. That way I can buy a really nice guitar body, make sure it's the right weight, not too heavy. Because a lot of these guitar bodies, they look really nice, or the paint job is really nice, but when you get it, they're heavy. I prefer to have something light. And building something like a Charvel, 2 humbucker style Charvel, it's not hard to do. I mean, you can do that easily in an afternoon. So yeah, I would definitely probably build another one. You can put better components, better speed, better parts such as bridges and tuners for sure, and pickups. You can get your favorite pickup winder to wind your pickups to your specs on your guitar, and you end up with a killer guitar. Should we look at the poll question before we carry on with some additional questions? I have a poll question waiting here. We might as well look at it. And the poll question says, Marshall's been sold to a Chinese company. Does this make it the end of the British brand? The options were Marshall won't be the same after me for this. Marshall hasn't done anything new in years. Maybe change is good. I couldn't care less about Marshall, and other means, let us know in the comments. So 52% of you said Marshall won't be the same after this. And I kind of agree with that. I think that, at least for me, unless they really, really take a hands-off approach to Marshall, which I think is going to be difficult, I think it's going to be a different Marshall after this. I'm hoping I'm wrong, because I really do like the Marshall brand, but I think 52% of you are actually quite right. Now, the second most popular answer here is I couldn't care less about Marshall. So if you're not a Marshall guy and you're looking at Fender amps or Supro amps or Mesa Boogie amps, whatever your favorite amplifier maker is, then it wouldn't really affect you, and I get that. 17% of you said Marshall hasn't done anything new in years. Maybe change is good. I don't know if I agree with you on that, though, because, I mean, the Studio Vintage line was quite good. I think they sold really, really well. I was very happy with those, and I felt that, that was a step in the right direction for Marshall. They came out with something that sounded very good, wasn't extremely expensive, and wasn't as loud, so you could actually use it in a lot of different scenarios. Some of the comments were interesting here. I'll read you one or two. So someone here said, this may or may not be the end of Marshall. Some would agree that Marshall died years ago. My personal opinion is that no matter who owns Marshall, if they are still making traditional amps and making at least a few of those traditional amps in the UK, then it's still Marshall. Unfortunately for Marshall and Fender, there are plenty of smaller companies making Marshalls and Fender style products that make a better product, and in some cases, not just a better product, it's a better product at a better price. So I kind of agree with that. I think that there's a lot of people vying for the Marshall pie as well as the Fender pie. A lot of people out there making very, very cool clones of that sound and offering some interesting features as well. So they definitely have to prove themselves. Somebody else here says, I have 4 amplifiers from 4 different makers. Not one is Marshall. So, if that's you, then I could understand why this wouldn't necessarily affect you at all. And then someone here says, I think HSG is just giving them a new life with a consolidated ownership and probably some new money. A lot of the buzz that the guitar community is making around the new ownership is rather misguided and shows a general misunderstanding and misinformed view of what venture capital firms like HSG do for a living. I do go as far as to say most guitarists have no idea what Telia and Altor or Zenith and Varen before that meant to Marshall. The primary difference now is that instead of a bunch of PE firms owning various minority stakes, you have one controlling stake. I suspect this makes things a lot easier for the family too. So, this is the ins and outs of owning a business and where, the money comes from and how to be able to navigate the waters. I think there's a lot of influx of new money is always good within a company. But again, influx of new money often comes with influx of new opinions, new directions and all that. So we'll have to wait and see on that. And then lastly, someone says, moved away from tubes a year ago and couldn't care less personally. And that's the flip side of the coin when it comes to amplifiers these days. A lot of people have decided to jump off the bandwagon and say, you know what, I don't really need a tube amp anymore. I can get everything I need and more through something like a Kemper or an Axe-FX or, some other XYZ multi-effects unit, which is kind of true. You can definitely get a lot more flexibility out of something like that if you can't play at high volumes, and you have a lot more at your disposal for the same amount of money. So there's always that. Mark had a question, so I'm going to answer that. Mark says, Tony, how many complete pedal boards do you currently have? I have my gigging acoustic board, an electric board, and now I'm making a compact flyboard. So, Mark, I really only have one, I'm going to say 1 to 2 boards going on at any time. I have my usual full-blown pedal board that I use most of the time. And then I have a smaller version of that pedal board that I grab. You know, if I need to go somewhere real quick and I don't feel like traveling heavy, I take that. Lately, what I've been doing, though, is I've been complementing my boards with multi-effects units. Sometimes I'll even leave my boards at home completely and just go full multi-effects, full digital, which I find is kind of easier to do sometimes, and it's a lot more flexibility at my fingertips. But then I do have to carry an FR powered speaker because I like to go through those as well, just to make sure that the sounds that I'm hearing that are programmed in my multi-effects is what I'm going to be hearing in a live scenario, because when I program my sounds, I do that through the actual speakers to make sure that it's working, and there's no surprises in a live scenario. So really, to answer your questions, only 2. The main board and in a smaller, I would call like a fly board kind of thing right now anyways. All right, guys, are we all done for today? Do we have any other questions that we want to go through or talk about? I know there was a couple of other little things that I had on the discussion block. One of the things that I wanted to talk about is how MXR is still beating the dead dog. They re-released the orange box Phase 90 once again. This time it's a gold version. So of course, you know, why not? Just repackage it, make it look sexy, and put it out there, and somebody will buy it. So originally we had the carrot colored Phase 90. This one now is gold. It looks like a gold block, you know, block of gold basically, and it's interesting to see. I don't know why you would necessarily want to have a gold MXR Phase 90. It's the 50th anniversary model. That's why they made it in gold, to indicate the 50th anniversary of the Phase 90. So it's available if you want it. It's $200. With so many Phase 90s floating around out there, I don't know why you would want to spend $200 on something like that. But if you do want it, because it looks nice, you can go out and grab it. It's just amazing how many times people will re-release the same stuff over and over again and get away with it. All you have to say is limited edition. You can't buy this crap forever, and there you go. And finally, I wanted to talk about the Jackson Stealth models, because they did release a new series of pure metal, if we can put that in air quotes, pure metal guitars. And if you're into that kind of thing, I'm not, but if you are, you do have a lot of pointy guitars available if you want them. And I'll share some pictures of that with you, so you can see what I mean. I'm sure there's a couple of you out there that do want to have those pointy guitars. Here we can see, for example, we have the one that looks a lot like the one in my logo, right? Neck through body construction, hallmark Jackson design, 1980 styling, you know, that kind of thing. The shark tooth inlays, of course. Floyd Rose is a must. Blackout, you know, humbuckers. Then we have this one here, which is very similar to, I think, the one that our very own Shane here bought not too long ago. Very, very pointy. You got to put a tennis ball on the tip there to make sure you don't take an eye out by accident. Not my thing at all, but I mean, if you're into that kind of thing, it's interesting. If I had to choose one, I would probably go with this one here, because this one is sort of the least dangerous looking of the bunch, but you still do have the, you know, the pointy can opener style headstock, which is indicative of those 80s guitars. But it's pretty cool. I would say this one would be the one that I'd probably go with. If it didn't have the shark tooth inlays, I'd probably be more interested in purchasing one like this. $1,499. So it's not, they're not giving them away. But, you know, if you're into these 80s guitars and that's something that you like, then definitely go out and get yourself one of those. I think that would definitely scratch the itch for the that 80s tones. David likes the Jackson Surfcasters. And Paul says the orange mini 100 watt class AB amps were best in show. I didn't really, excuse me, I didn't really catch those. I've tried to like the mini, the orange tone a couple of times. The thing that I find with the orange tones on the amplifier is that they don't have a whole lot of headroom. If you like the orange sound, it sounds good when it's cranked and it has a nice gain to it. But I find that it's always lacking on the clean side. And that's one of the reasons why I kind of stayed away from orange amps all this time. At one point, I was very, very close to pulling the trigger on an orange Rockaverb. I really liked it, but I didn't. I just ended up deciding not to go with the orange brand because I needed something that had a little bit more headroom, you know. But a lot of people do love the orange sound. It's a very nice creamy sound if you get into that. All right, guys, I think we're gonna wrap it up. I've been talking for an hour and a half. Hopefully you guys have not gotten sick of me yet. I do appreciate you guys tuning in. If you guys haven't given a thumbs up before, please give a thumbs up before you leave today. If you haven't seen my video on the Marshall thing, I put it in the chat, so have a listen to that and give me some feedback on what you think is going on there. I would appreciate it. If there's any last minute questions before I go, now's the time. Give me I can give you a couple more minutes if you have anything that you want to ask specifically. Otherwise, we're going to wrap it up and call it a day and leave some for next Sunday. All right, guys, I guess nobody has any other questions. Please take an opportunity to give me a thumbs up on the way out. I appreciate you guys dropping by today. And if there's anything that you want to ask about after the show, if you're watching a rerun, just post the question in the chats and I'll answer that as well. Have a good week. Hopefully you guys stay away from the bugs and we'll talk again next Sunday. Take it easy, guys. Go play your gear.